Okay. Fingers crossed. Don't do it again. That's never happened before.
Oh, it was weird. It's like, when you loop music and it just keeps playing back and back and back.
It's like eerie.
That's
It was
never
like
happened before.
It was
Halloween
weird. It
eerie.
was like it's like
No!
it is. It's doing it again. Playing back and back and back.
It's like eerie. That's never happened before.
It was like it is. It's doing it again.
Okay, wait. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I closed my windows. Why is that happening? Okay, just want to make sure we're live. Okay, awesome. So I know this wasn't the best night. It was like it's Halloween night, and then this is kind of last minute, spur of the moment. I really wanted to have you on, Nathalie, and I know you wanted to get on here before your presentation as well. So probably not the best night to have others in here, but thanks for being here, Laura, and thanks for taking time to make this happen, Nathalie.
Absolutely. And you're just gonna record it? Is that what you're doing then? And then
It's recorded now,
Great.
and we're live streaming on Facebook,
Perfect.
and I'll consider putting this on as a podcast. Don't worry, we'll talk about it. Let's go. Laura, tell us what you're grateful for first before I start drilling Nathalie with questions.
Well, grateful the roads are dry going to work, to and from work. That was quite nice today. And for the kind anesthetist, as I say, this is the 6th year they've hired face painters for us just to give us something to look forward to every year. So
Nice. I like it. Did you decide what your face is going to look like?
they kind of show you what do you want. And so just do something with flowers or blue or something. And then this literally took them maybe 3 minutes to do. They're extremely talented. It's quite cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
Oh, fun.
Nathalie, do you have anything to share with us?
Yeah, I'm really grateful. I have a good friend of mine who's an acupuncturist, and she's very talented. And I went to her today, and my knees feel really good. So I'm walking around without any pain, and that's makes for a good day.
Yeah, chronic pain is no fun.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's great. Mine's an easy one. We have a couple people in our life that we're dealing with relationship issues, and that makes me feel grateful for the relationship that we have with Dorothy and I and a tight-knit family. Not that we don't have our own problems, our own domestics, right, Laura?
Everyone does.
Everyone does, I think. Yeah.
Heard our pen issue live on camera.
It's the big things.
We don't really have like big arguments, which is nice, but
That's amazing.
we were live and we were kind of arguing about pens, and it was really what happened. All right, Nathalie, let's talk about sexuality.
Sure.
I want to get into this. So help me out here. So why is this is the word taboo? What's taboo mean?
Taboo mean like it's not socially acceptable to talk about it in most settings in our society.
Got it. So is this a taboo subject?
I think so. I think just with the amount of restrictions on where it's appropriate to talk about sexuality, where it isn't appropriate, all of the layers and layers of constriction around how we even converse about our sexuality. I think it makes it a taboo. Then there's the whole thing like a taboo show that's all about sexuality, that just brings it all out of the shadows and goes, here, let's talk about all the things that people don't talk about.
Yeah, and I was like, when I was posting this, I was like, I thought it was a great idea. Like, we're a group of women, and like, why not talk about sexuality? Then I was like posting it. I'm like, maybe because the word sex, and I'm like posting it. I'm like, is there something wrong with this? Should I be posting about this? So that's why, and for me, I don't really have a problem biting my tongue in most cases, but I'm like, is this offending people? So at any rate, why sexuality? Why are you talking about it?
Well, I think it's such a natural part of our human experience. You know, it's whether we're in a relationship or not, our sexuality is our intimacy with life around us. It's our intimacy with the world in any of our relationships. You know, with the nature around us, even with Mother Earth, our sexuality is expressed in like connection, one might say. And so I think it's vital to our human existence. And I would even judge that it's vital to our life force energy to have a good relationship with how sexual energy moves, what we feel about ourselves sexually, our beliefs about ourselves, how we love ourselves, all of that is connected to the realm of sexuality. So I think it's vital to life force, really.
So what is it that people are afraid of?
Well, I think it can get a little scary if we've been taught from a young age to not enjoy pleasure. Even like I meet a lot of women, especially I work mostly with women who are taught from a really young age, whether it's from their family of origin or maybe a spiritual community or whatever, that pleasure isn't acceptable. Like it's okay to have sex if you want to have babies, but it isn't okay for the body just to experience pleasure on the daily, whether or not it's related to sex even. You know, so I think taking it out of those dark spaces, those dark places, and bringing it back into the conversation again, especially since there's so many women that have a tough time with certain aspects of their sexuality. And so if it hasn't been ingrained from a young age that it's natural and normal and right to talk about it, then we'll go into our adulthood and not talk about it. So then, you know, anything that perpetuates and becomes a bigger and bigger problem doesn't have a good outlet to heal it or to change it.
Right. So how do you break the cycle? Because it seems like, okay, we're not getting it in childhood, or we're not having these conversations early on, but now as adults, it's like, should we be talking about this? Are people going to be offended? Like, and it's maybe it's worth mentioning that seems like in today's day and age, you could say just about anything to offend someone.
True.
And I joke that like comedians probably have the toughest job ever because they
Agreed.
basically just make fun of everyone. And now you can't make fun of anyone.
That's true. That's true. So it limits what we can talk about.
Right. So back to my question was, if we're not getting it in childhood and now it comes to adulthood, what's going on? How can we address this?
Yeah, I think the more and more, I mean, I think it's really brave of you, Drew, to even like attempt to bring this, you know, into a community of mostly women and bring this subject up that might have some resistance to talking about. I think the more we can have these kind of like smaller, intimate discussions about it and just lay it on the line, just talk honestly and openly about it, then it becomes easier in maybe larger environments or in a different environment, or, you know, just to have more and more small conversations in an intimate setting like this, I think is really healthy. And I think it undoes some of that programming that it's just not okay to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your courage as well, because this isn't like mainstream. People aren't going to talk about this kind of
Nope.
stuff.
Nope.
And I feel like I'd imagine there's some people that are like, oh, I probably don't want to tune into that because like the word just sounds like,
Totally.
you know, like taboo or dirty, or it's just an odd concept to me. Like what's normalized, what is acceptable, what we can and can't talk about. I feel like it's getting worse. There's less and less things that society says we should be talking about. And like it's to a point now where we can't even share our own very own opinion. Like sometimes I'll share on my social media and then people like attack me and I'm like, it's my page, in my opinion.
Right.
Go
That's
somewhere else if you don't want to see it, right?
Yeah.
It's an odd concept. So why don't we dig a little bit deeper here? What are some burning topics, or maybe healing? What are we talking about here that can actually make a difference for our listeners?
Well, one other thing that I think is really important to talk about in the realm of sexuality is that there's nothing wrong or bad about things that we find erotic, or things maybe that aren't working. There's a lot of shame that we often carry, especially as women, because I can't speak to other genders. There's a lot of potential shame we carry about something not working. Therefore, I don't want to talk about it, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut about it, and I'm going to keep it hidden, and then I'm going to get more and more shame because it's still not working. Maybe this thing is painful, or maybe I'm not turned on in my partnership, or whatever it might be. And so this concept that nothing is wrong with your sexuality, everything has a reason to it, and there's a pathway to healing. And if we can undo some of the shame around the bits that are crunchy or constricting or that are painful, then it makes it easier to take a step towards, okay, now what do I need to do in order to actually change this in my life? So that, if nothing else, that is the message that I really want to get across, is that there's nothing wrong with what you find erotic or your sexuality, whether it's working or not working.
So, okay, where does the shame come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes it's a societal shame. There's an expectation perhaps that we're supposed to, want to have sex a certain amount of times, or maybe in our partnership, maybe one partner wants to have sex more than another does. And so, and oftentimes we can say things in our languaging of like, well, I want it more than you do, or this isn't good enough for me, or, so even in our partnership, we can experience some messaging around it's bad or not good enough, or I'm not good enough. In this realm, I think a lot of it personally comes from society and what we're taught. A healthy sexual expression should look like. We're taught these things in movies and media and social media and from our family of origin. And if it doesn't look like that, then there's the potential to berate ourselves, or to think that I'm doing it wrong in some way, or I'm my sexual beingness is wrong in some way. And so then we can kind of layer these beliefs in our own psyche, and it becomes more and more shameful.
Yeah. And I feel like it's the expectation, right? Like you mentioned, it's like we live in such a crazy world now where I was telling this story about a little man. He's a year and a half, and he's like running around. We're in this beautiful beach area, and he's running around this pathway, and you have like these giant, like, I've never seen homes like this, like $20 million homes that are facing the ocean. You have a path, and then you have the ocean, and it's like the most beautiful scenery, at least I could possibly imagine. And and he's running around, a little guy's running around, like kind of bumping into people, or like laughing, and like he's just learning to walk and talk and communicate. He's kind of bumping into people, and he's babbling, and so many people are just not present. They're gone. They're like not in this realm. They're on their phones, in technology, and they're not appreciating a little child, the scenery. And it's like we live in this Instagram type of world where it's the expectations, there's just so much fabrication. So tying that to sexuality, it's like we expect what someone else has made up.
That's right.
In Hollywood land for our life. And if it doesn't happen, we're a failure, which probably has to do with shame as well.
Exactly. Even when it comes to beauty, I know a lot of women, again, I'll refer this to women just because of my experience, we'll look at the media of what beauty is supposed to look like, right? And if anyone knows anything about the media, you'll know that it's all been photoshopped. That isn't actually what those women look like in real life, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll see these images of what beauty looks like, and then we'll look at ourselves naked in the mirror, and it doesn't match that necessarily. And then there's all kinds of programs that go on inside of, well, if I'm not, if I don't feel beautiful inside, then I don't necessarily feel sexy, and maybe I don't want to be intimate with someone. And so shame can also come from just the imagery we see about other bodies out there. Yeah.
Any advice or thoughts around improving a relationship when it comes to sexuality?
Yeah, I was thinking about that these last couple of days. What has really, so I'm I laugh, my husband and I laugh. We're in a serial monogamous relationship. Like it's always been monogamy, and it probably always will be monogamy. And it's our agreement in this particular lifetime. We've been together 25 years, and it's going to be him and I. And so, we've gone through lots of iterations of how to keep a spark going for 25 years. Like, it doesn't just stay lit. I mean, there all kinds of winds of change come through, and children come through, and responsibilities and painful things come through. And so in order to ignite that spark over and over and over again. We've talked about agreements in the past, and that seems to be something that comes up often, is actually having a discussion around, what are our agreements when it comes to sexuality? Would we ever consider for having, bringing in another person to have sex? Would we ever consider going to a public club? Would we ever consider, like, what are our agreements in terms of sex, and really sitting down talking about what works and doesn't work? What are our comfort zones, and what are we willing to explore? Having that discussion with a partner is incredibly beneficial, and can be a little scary, if I'm being totally honest. What if all of a sudden you discover your partner doesn't want the same things you do?
So what do you think? I mean, I feel like communication in general, it's so lacking. Like, there's so many issues with emojis, thumbs ups, huge pet peeve of mine. Not really engaging with it when, like, we're at the grocery store, and I remember, and it wasn't that long ago, we would sit there and we'd talk to someone in line, and now everyone is looking down at their phones. It's easy to pick on technology, but it's the truth. It's the world we live in. How can we, and it comes to relationships as well. Like, I feel like we have a really hard time connecting with our spouses because of lack of communication.
Yeah.
And there's no conversation around it because everyone's so busy looking in the wrong direction, in my opinion. How can we start having these conversations with our significant others?
Yeah, I think it's a really valid question that goes way beyond sexuality into, a good, healthy relationship and what communication looks like. And I think coming back to agreements of setting aside some time daily, even if it's just 15 minutes, to turn the technology completely off, and sit and talk about the day. There's that whole research that was done around how many hugs a person needs just to survive. We need something like, I think, 8 or 9 hugs a day just for basic survival. And in order to be thriving, it's like 18 to 20 hugs a day to be thriving in these physical bodies. Like, physical touch is actually vital to our body's capacity to be as healthy as we possibly can. And so, my recommendation at the onset is just start to carve out time as a priority, because oftentimes sexuality gets bumped down the list especially if there's something that isn't working really well, right? We'll put kids first, put career next, maybe we'll put the house next, maybe we'll put finances next, and then maybe we'll put sex at the bottom of that list if we're lucky, right? And so what if that level of intimacy necessary for thriving became a priority, and we actually chunk time out every day to focus on a relationship, on what's happening there.
Yeah, I suppose it's anything you could look at, right? Like, everyone has the same hours in the day, and then those things that we prioritize or push to the top of the list, that's what we make time for.
Exactly. And we'll do it no matter what. We're prioritizing mostly unconsciously. So what if we started doing it consciously by bringing this in, not from a perspective of, oh, I need more sex, but like, this is my life force energy. This is my own like connection to life itself. And if I'm not nurturing it, then who is nurturing it, right? Like, it's a choice we all get to make.
Right. So you're talking about this in an online summit of some type, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, there's a soulful intimacy sexuality summit that's happening. There's like 30 speakers, some really great topics. So,
okay. So why did you choose this topic? You're like, hey, this is what I want to talk about at this summit.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm the kind of person that likes walking on the edge. I like talking about the things that people don't want to talk about. And so shadows are another something that we usually don't want to talk about. It's like the repressed parts of ourselves, right? The parts we don't want anyone to see. Maybe it's like the road rage or the parts that get jealous at others, or those kind of things. And so when we bring sexuality and shadows together, we start to realize that our sexuality, our expression in the world as a sexual being, is directly connected to what we've repressed from childhood. And, there was all kinds of beautiful books written about this. And we did a bunch of research to create a whole program on how do we heal these things. And it went right back to childhood wounding. And if we look at our sexuality and our sexual health from a perspective of what's unhealed from my childhood, then it really informs how to essentially liberate our sexuality now as adults. It's kind of fascinating.
Right. So, okay. I feel like there's a lot of what is it? Do you have any thoughts around that? Like we have such trauma around childhood, and then in particular, we could look at sexuality. What's going on there? Like, can we dig a bit deeper?
Yeah, well, what a lot of these really amazing psychologists and researchers have found out is that, and when you really stop to think about it, our sexuality is our intimacy, it's our connection to another or to many others, and our sense of belonging. And so most of our childhood wounds took place from a need to belong and a need to be accepted and cared for, intended to as a young child. And so, if our parents told us to like don't be naked or don't touch yourself or don't, and they got really angry at us when we were really young, and therefore we took some aspect. It doesn't even have to be related to sexuality. It could be related to connection or to free expression or anything else. But then we take that aspect of ourselves and we put it into shadow because we need to belong. So then as adults, we still need to feel like we belong to something or have like an intimate connection with somebody else. And so all of those childhood wounds just play out in an adult way once we get older.
Well, tell us more about shadows. You mentioned that a few times. I know a bit about it. Give our listeners a chance to learn more.
Sure. Yeah. Essentially, shadows is a term that was coined by Carl Jung in like the early 1900s or something. And it refers to the repressed or the hidden aspects of self. So any aspect of self that was told it was bad or not acceptable in some way in early childhood. So less than 8 years old, essentially, is when most of our shadows form. When we were told some sort of behavior was bad, whether it be using our voice, being loud, hugging someone, like coming in for physical affection. It could be absolutely anything. And we were told on some level, no, that's bad. Essentially we hear, I won't love you if you keep doing that. And so we change our behavior to continue to be loved. And we take those aspects of ourselves and we shove them away. And we put them in those dark recesses of the subconscious mind. And then what happens later on in life is all of a sudden it's not working anymore. I realize that I need to use my voice because I've been quiet so many times, and I maybe let other people walk all over me. Maybe I don't have good boundaries. And eventually I get to a point where, holy cow, like I need to change. Something isn't working right now because all of these relationships are going awry, or these situations aren't working the way I want them to. And so we go back and we go, hey, there was something from my early childhood I was told was bad. What if I reframe that, brought it out of the darkness and loved it again within myself? What if I learned to love all aspects of myself again in a different way? And so that's what we do with the shadows. We bring them back into the light and learn to have a new relationship with them, and essentially love all of who we are again.
So how do you know? Like, how do you know that you have shadows and hiding in this? You have emotions hiding in this shadow and something else hiding in that one. How do you find out?
Well, a good indication is if there's like all of a sudden there's emotions that start to flow and they weren't really provoked in any way. So like road rage is a perfect example of repressed anger. So we're driving along, right? Tickety boo, having a great old drive, and all of a sudden somebody cuts you off and there's like this intensity of anger. I don't know if maybe it's just me that's experienced this. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this before, but all of a sudden you start swearing and flipping the bird and all these things, right? Or tailgating or whatever. I mean, I've done
Don't
it all
cut you
in my
off. Is that what you're
lifetime.
saying?
Or yeah, exactly. Don't cut me off. I used to have a whole bunch of repressed anger. So it's that intensity of emotion that seems to come out of nowhere. Like crying over spilt milk is a great example of all of a sudden we just start crying and we don't know why we're crying. There's like this incredible sadness moving through you. Well, chances are there was some grief that was still in the body that wasn't expressed. and is looking for an outlet. So we say in the shadow work realm that it leaks out. The emotions start to leak out sideways, kind of out of control, out of our control, our seeming control.
So, okay, so I would say everyone deals with this, right?
Everybody's got shadows.
Yeah, unless you deal with it.
Unless you deal with it. Yeah.
So is there a point where you can remove the shadows, eliminate them, or are you always working on them?
Well, that's a really great question. And I would say to that, like, if I have, I had a lot of repressed anger from my teenage years. I was a really angry teenager. And so I get into my 30s and 40s, I think, is when I started realizing how much repressed anger I had. And so I did a bunch of work to release the anger. So just found some good, healthy ways to release anger. Now I have a process of, like, I scream in my pillow, or I take a pool noodle and I go whack something inanimate.
That's your husband, is it?
Not my husband, something that doesn't talk back. and I use my voice and I express whatever needs to be expressed. And that anger isn't repressed anymore. So when something shows up again, that stirs up anger, I can just cleanly say to the person, look, I'm feeling some anger. This is what's going on right now. And it doesn't come out in like a leaky way, or I don't come out destroying people, tearing people's heads off, et cetera, because it was repressed in the body. So I would say, yes, we learn how to control it, but not only control it, actually, like, release the pressure out of the pressure cooker, and then learn how to handle those emotions in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so something that we could all benefit from working on in one way or another.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, that's why there's like anger management group. I don't know if you've heard about the Rage Room. There's a Rage Room in Edmonton that I haven't gone to yet. You can just go there and, like, smash things. You can smash TVs. You can smash and get the anger out. I'm like, oh, what a great idea. So, there are good, healthy outlets for anger. And I say anger, I use that one because many of us repress our anger, but there's also repressed grief. And that would be a whole other process of learning how to express our grief and find a good place for that. Yeah.
Yeah, like you see, like you hear, I mean, you come across certain people. I mean, and I feel like everyone deals with it on some level, but you come across people that you can tell, like, they have that internal anger that just, like, that radiates.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate. I feel like it's a bit dangerous. Like, it's the same thing. Like, you have maybe short-term relationship with someone. I don't necessarily mean sexual at this point in this scenario, but you're having a conversation with someone, or you have a short-term relationship and they seem like a lovely person, and then, like, one thing happens and they snap, and it's like, whoa, like, didn't expect that from you.
Exactly. That's when for sure something was repressed, and so it's out of character. Those experiences that really seem out of character, and we all have a different version of something like that, where we don't know where the emotion came from. And yeah. And then so relating this back to sexuality, the impact of having those repressed shadows in the realm of sexuality is then you've got a whole bunch of repressed emotion in a realm that can easily cause like misuses of power. And you look at our society right now, and sexual energy is misused all over the place. There's all kinds of abuse that goes on. That's the extreme of not dealing with those wounds, right? And so this is why I think it's important to have these conversations, and why I'm so grateful that you are wanting to have it, is because if we take it out of the shadows, then it doesn't have to go to those extremes and turn into scenarios that are dangerous and hurtful and painful.
Right. Yeah, that's super helpful to tie that back around, because those shadows, we just keep, like, stuffing our emotions down, and then, like we talked about at the beginning, it's like no one wants to talk about it, and, like, how could we possibly deal with it? Anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And how are we going to heal from some of these really painful experiences if we're not even talking about sexuality in general? So it opens the doorway to have some profound healing take place from whatever's gone on in our lives. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. That was fantastic. I think it's so important, like, the things, and good for you for stepping up, because the things that people don't want to talk about are probably things that we need to talk about. And I mean, I wouldn't even be talking about it if I didn't see what you were doing. I was like, all right, let's talk about this. Let's see what this is about.
That's super brave, Drew. Super brave.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Laura. I'd imagine that some people were like, I don't know if I should be in that room, but
Totally. That's good.
I think it's important that we're comfortable enough to be open and honest. And I think it's a cultural issue, of course. I think it can be generational.
Absolutely.
And I've had to take many courses through HS with Indigenous and generational trauma. And I think that actually that word could be used almost when it comes to this, because if you've been, as you say, been made to feel guilty or that's wrong, and how do you not pass that on to your children and their children and their children? So I think it's very powerful, and thank you for stepping up and putting it out there, because I've seen the downside of it, surgically stuff there that is very traumatic and heartbreaking. So it's nice that there are people out there trying to, take that stigma away.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's a really important piece in this, is in order to break the chain, we need to develop some new habits about it. And it starts right here with just openly having a conversation. I think that's where we can start to develop new patterns and habits. And then we go to that next level of, okay, what now can I do?
What do we do?
Now what do we do? Right. And then,
yeah. I think as individuals, we have a lot of power and we don't realize that sometimes. And it can be so subtle, but it's there. So
yeah, absolutely.
So what is it, before we wrap things up here, what are the action steps? Having conversations, talking to your spouse, talking to yourself?
Yeah, I think that's really big, exploring what pleasure means to a person, whether that bit that you brought up, Drew, just about being present to the moment and like turning off the digital, whatever distractions, and just explore, like, what does my body need right now? Like, what would bring this body pleasure, whether it's a workout, whether it's a glass of water, whether it's putting my feet on the earth outside. Like, that starts to open up the doorways too of healthy relating to the environment around us, and then that can extend into our relationships, and definitely communicating agreements and comfort zones. All of that is super important.
Awesome. Tell us about this summit in case anyone wants to check it out.
Yeah, so it's November 2nd to 4th, and it's free. And there's 30 speakers who have a wide range of topics around sexuality. Some is intimacy, some have to do with relationships, but it's all connected to like what it means to be intimate with self or others. And I think it's going to be super juicy. I know half of the panelists there, and there's some lovely folks that have come together for it. So yeah, be great if anyone wants to come.
It's all online. It's all virtual.
Yeah, it's all virtual. And it's all free. If people just hop on whenever the talks are happening, then you can just watch it.
Yeah. And how do we find the link or information about it?
I'll put the link maybe right after wherever this video is posted in the group. I'll just put the link there.
Sure. And excuse me, would there be a website that you know about?
That's a really great question. I think it's just the links to register. And then in that, they'll show you right away who all the speakers are and what their topics are. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for everything. We really appreciate it. It's nice to have. I actually thought we should do some more guest speakers kind of in here. And when I saw your information pop up about this, I was like, what better time to give it a shot? So thanks for trying it out with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the invite, and thanks for coming, Laura.
Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
All right, you guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you inside.
Sounds
Happy
good.
Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Guys.